So I'm the founder of Telnus Group, or Telnus and Telnus Tech. We're an MVNO targeting the SMB segment in Sweden, and also an automated digital telco platform serving an international MVNO market. So I have a background from, I'm an engineering background and worked at Telenor for some years, both in Sweden and internationally. So I have experience of being in the traditional MNO, or the legacy incumbent provider in Sweden, and brought some experiences from that, where I decided to found our MVNO in 2016. Just to have the opportunity to start from a blank sheet of paper and used opportunities that's out there that I'm going to talk about more in this presentation. So my driving force, so to say, is to actually try to make telecom a joyful experience, because it's not the industry that is known for customer experience, sadly. It's more on the top list of the worst industries in most markets. And that goes both for the end users, but also for different parts of the value chain. And I think there's great opportunities within this, because we still serve a service that's crucial in everyday's life, and where communication and digital communication services are getting more and more crucial in terms of just the digital innovation and space going forward. And that then goes with a lot of opportunities for us out there. So as I said, we are an operator in Sweden, an MVNO, as most of you, I guess. We are also a separate company called Telnus Tech that is a software provider serving our technical services that we have had to build for the last 7 years to be able to serve our customers in our MVNO business. So, but we go back a bit in terms of where I see the telecom industry. I see some driving forces, where one is that the consumer preferences and expectations is changing quite rapidly. And I think that's other industries that is driving that force. The end users are not comparing only the telco providers against each other. They're comparing one app in their phone to the other, which means that the self-service, the digital experiences, and the overall customer interactions is compared with services like Netflix and Spotify, etc. And that is just raising the bar of expectations also in telecom. The other part is, I think we all can agree on that we have commodity products and services. And I think that's both good and bad in today's environment. I think we should all be very happy about that we're do not have services that is no longer relevant of purchasing when the economic situation is bad, because everyone still is in great need of communications. But also, if you only provide traditional mobile subscriptions, etc., then it's really commodity, and you will only compete with price in the end. So I think the innovation within the traditional telecom is a great opportunity to differentiate and not to just be part of a price war in the end. The last part is the big telcos and traditional telcos is very high on OpEx and IT. It's an industry that has some way to go in terms of self-service and a full and digital experience, which means that we are still have customer journeys that is dependent on people in the front and like in sales, but also in the back end of just doing manual operations. And this is something that old legacy systems then is a hinder of innovation, of customer experience, but also to have go-to-market and speed of launching new innovation in the market, because everything will just take too long time. My experiences from Telenor, for example, is you start caring about the customer experience, to start getting to know what the end user expectations or frustrations are, but every single little project could take years because the amount of complexity in IT. And also new ideas or innovation, the implementation times is just way too long, which means that before it gets launched, it maybe might be irrelevant or someone else goes beforehand. So the one who wins the war of being have a flexible environment to work in, I think both can differentiate a lot in terms of the actual products and services, but also in speed and go-to-market. I think this is a little bit about the same, but just in terms of the market situation for most telcos is still that it's quite unhappy customers. It is manual efficient operation, and it is IT legacy that is driving these forces that I just talked about. But that also goes with a lot of opportunities, of course. We did a survey a while back, which is quite interesting, where we interviewed 200 telecom executives and 1,000 consumers, and asked both the operators and the end users of their expectations and experiences in relationship with their telco. And the output was very interesting because it was such a gap between what the operators think themselves or what the customers actually think in the end. So one of the outputs, it's a long survey, you can get it afterwards if you like, we have it up on our website also, is the big telcos, they really believe that their customers are loyal. And I think the numbers maybe show that, because I mean, it's a commodity service, it's a bit of hassle to switch, and maybe the upside or the differentiation in the market is not big enough to make the effort. But 66% of the consumers actually say that they're willing to switch if they actually would have a better offer, or if innovation was put out there in the end. And I think this is very interesting, that it's no loyalty for the traditional telco. It's more the lack of innovation or interest to switch that makes the churn quite low in general. And the interest of new products and services are quite high. I think if you look also on different more strategic recommendations from consultancy firms like McKinsey is the one I'm referring to here, all of them more or less are recommended to the big telcos to launch digital attacker brands, to be able to approach these challenges I just talked about, to both be able to target a specific target segment, to go digital instead of their huge IT transformation or transformation projects, but also to be able to deliver more on the needs of the end user and to be more customer focused in the end, because it takes too long to do the traditional transformation. And I think this is an industry where we can compare quite a lot to the fintech, where there was few players in each market in telecom and in finance a few years back, but it's been a huge amount of fintech startups coming up and challenging and disrupting different parts of the value chain in banking and in finance. And I think this has not really yet happened in telecom, but it's more or less the same driving forces that was in the finance and banking industry a few years back that now is also in telecom, which also I think it's quite interesting who's going to take this space. Is it the big telcos in itself, but obviously a big opportunity for what I call teltech companies as ourselves, and MVNOs, I think, have a great opportunity to take a lot of these underserved segments and opportunities in different parts of the value chain and for different target segments. Because for the MVNO have some great opportunities that the big telcos don't. And that is that they have the opportunity to focus on a target, like one target segment. It's very hard to create true value for the end user if you need to serve all. Like if you are one of 3 or one of 4 MNOs in a country, you need to have like a very broad offering. And I think where great innovation comes is when you have a niched product for a target segment and do something innovative and focused for that segment. Because otherwise, to innovate when you're focusing on everyone is more or less impossible, in my opinion. And the MVNO can, and I think most successful MVNOs I've seen out there in Europe do have a clear proposition for a clear target segment, and then are doing very well on some type of innovation towards that group. It's also a possibility to serve other segments that maybe not have been approached yet because maybe they're too small or they have been too expensive to approach in traditional sales, and where digital experience enables just new segments that no one is focusing on yet. The SMB segment is one of those. I will dive into that later. The other part MVNOs have is we have more or less the opportunity to start from a blank sheet of paper and to be good where the large MNOs aren't, which is the efficiency in our operations. And I think that's where most of us are really, really, really good. We do great job with quite a few amount of people. And I think most are focusing on what the others can't challenge, which is, I think, one of the success criteria in the end. But if you manage to have an efficient operation, and if you manage to have also an IT environment to make the benefits of having a speed in go-to-market and launch stuff and have flexible, because I think all of us can agree on that we don't know what the future look like, but we know that everything is moving faster and faster and faster. So my opinion is that the winner in the end will be the one that's just quickest to adapt to new expectations and to new technology and to new customer behaviors out there, because that's where we can do faster. We will never be the first one launching the 5G network, etc., etc. But that's not really the end user target or value. It's what you do with it and how you innovate on top of it that would create end user value and differentiation in the end. So if we deep dive into the left column here in terms of our MVNO, I thought I'll share a bit about what we are doing, so you will understand how we have approached these opportunities. So Telnet is digital MVNO. We launched in 2017, and we focused on the target segment, or we focus on the target segment as part of the SMB segment. So we are only targeting businesses and small and medium businesses, because that's a segment that is very, very underserved in many markets, because it's been somewhere in between the consumer and the enterprise solution. It's a high margin segment in most markets. We have been researching it in most of Europe now, because they still are in need of B2B services, and it's quite easy to upsell different services on top of the traditional subscriptions, so to say. They're often quite many, but they have been too expensive to previously approach, because in B2B, the traditional way of offering is through like sales from person to person. And it's been too expensive to have sales with a customer that's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 employees. Obviously, it's better worth my time to spend on a company that's 500 or 1,000 employees. And that leaves them still with the B2B products and services needs. Maybe they have a little bit different need. We can go into that. But no one is really focusing on them. They just get the same as the big ones without the personal connection. But now when the market is mature, because I would say it actually is mature in most markets, to actually approach in a digital customer experience and digital and online sales, all of a sudden it's a high ARPU segment that's very underserved, and an opportunity to differentiate by approaching it. And that's what we've done in Sweden. This is also the segment with the highest unhappiness, so to say, just because they are left in between two large segments in terms of the total consumer market and the enterprise market. So the feedback from most SMB customers from previous offerings before we launched, etc., is that they're not prioritized, the services are not adapted for them. And also they feel like they're a bit scammed because they get the B2B offerings, but since they don't get a personal connection, they get it without discounts, more or less. So what we have done with our MVNO is that we're focusing only on this segment to become like the business provider in the market. We have then traditional services like mobile subscriptions, mobile broadband, etc., but also a self-service PBX, like a fixed number that most customers do want in terms of for their company. It's a SMB focused PBX though, because like a 2-3 people company, they don't need an advanced switchboard. They just need a fixed number to allocate between your 3 people in the company, and maybe have some opening hours, etc. So the features are much more less, but the need of the service is sometimes higher. The customer journey for our MVNO is fully digital. So we have like one salesperson to, otherwise everything is fully online sales, both for the mobile and the PBX, which is quite unique because for me and for us, it was a bit of a risk, like is the market mature enough for this? And it's been, I would say, a bit of a struggle to make it easy enough for the customers to actually purchase online. So obviously it's not all about the customer journey, but also about offering and packaging to make it able to approach in this channel. Also, the onboarding is 100% self-service, both for the end user and the actual operator. And that has been one of our USPs in the market. Like you click on a number, you have eSIM, the next second you're able to call. And the same goes with the PBX, where you order a fixed number, you set up who is the number supposed to route to, and then you're able to call the minute after. And that obviously has been a differentiation in the market, but also what we talked about earlier in terms of efficiency for us as an operator. Of course, the margins and the whole P&L is very beneficial when you don't have to have manual operations and pay for people doing manual stuff. And I think what's interesting with our services, and I'm happy to share more data if you want, is that the end users actually are mature to onboard themselves, but also are using our like self-service portal actively throughout the years. So I think we have quite a traditional amount of contacts with our customers on a yearly basis, but we see that 4 out of 5 changes or interactions is through the self-service portal. So when they buy more subscriptions, or when they want to change their data limits, or when they want to add another administrator to serve the the companies, different employees, they do it in the self-service portal and online. And that is something we're tracking quite well to make sure that we obviously are serving our customers, but also these are errands that otherwise would be in support. And the support errands for us is like crazy low, which is a good thing, because then we can give them a lot of love when they actually contact us. And that has been one of the USPs we can have in our market, where we can spend time on the customers that actually are in contact and have that as a differentiator, without having to pay too much for it, because they're so few. But I think it's a balance here in terms of it needs to be simple enough and it needs to be intuitive enough in the self-service for the customer to appreciate the self-service. If it feels forced, it's not an USP, it's opposite way around. If we go into how we were able to like manage these solutions, I think since we started in 2016, I did not think we would have to build so much technology to actually do it self-service and to have the actual customer journeys fully digital. A lot was lacking in different types of partners in the value chain, both from the MNO and wholesale teams side, but also from like different enablers, solutions, etc. So over the years, when we first launched, we have some external parties, but we have taken some risks and built a lot of technology ourselves, which 2 years ago ended up with a separate company, Telco Tech, that now are serving other MVNOs also with our technology. Because our strategy now in an international level is basically to enable other MVNOs in other markets instead of going international with ourselves, but for others to take their market and untapped potential in the digital era, because you can launch whatever on top of the platform, more or less. And I would say when we researched into this, one of the segments and untapped potential for an MVNO is to start target the SMB segment. We have discussed a lot of this internally. And if you look at different markets out there in Europe, the SMB segment is very, very underserved, both in terms of focus, or if you have like focused offerings or services for them at all, but also in terms of products that's possible to launch on top of existing B2B providers. And I think most MVNOs that are in my network are consumer providers that quite easily could expand their offering into SMB, where I think it's first now that the market is ready for it. And that means that it's an untapped potential to do so. I don't have too much time to dive into it, but you're welcome to reach out if you, because we have experience of it in Sweden, and the potential is there. And we've decided more or less that we're not going to enter more markets ourselves, but are happy to help others with our platform for B2B instead. Last thing and last slide I have, because I think this is, when I talk to a lot of MVNOs out there, I think to be able to actually serve the untapped potential and to make a difference and to become a Techco, which I think is an opportunity out there for all of us, we need to think bigger. And because it's very easy to see ourselves as small and as small ambitions, but I think this is the era where we're not too small to make a difference. And my little quote here, by sleeping with a mosquito in your bedroom, I think it's more relevant than ever. Well, that was it for me. I open up for some questions.
Okay, well, I think that's great. I particularly love the mosquito, and yes, I'm super allergic to them. So yes, you don't have to be big to have a massive effect. I really enjoyed that a lot. We've got a question from our audience. So Cohen asks, what is your advice towards mobile operators having a radio license and opening their interfaces towards the MVNO?
Oof, I have a lot of opinions. I'm not sure.
I have a feeling you could talk about that quite a lot.
No, but I think it's very different in different markets here. Like some MNOs see MVNOs as opportunity and partner to approach specific target segments and are more open. Then it goes down to strategy. I think some MNOs see it more, here's an opportunity to gain total market share on our network, and the MVNOs is an opportunity to have more niched services for different target segments. Those are the markets that have good relationships, I would say, and should open up more to not do it halfway through, but to do it the full way through, to actually become partner to approach the total market share together. Some others see it's more, I have my MVNOs because I don't want anyone else to have them in their network. So it's more like a blocker strategy, but then while they're in my network, I want to make it quite hard because I don't want them to compete with our main brand. So you want to do to make them happy, but quite I would say limiting, because they're more afraid of their main brand than they see the opportunity to gain market share from others. And those, I think, have a long way before they open up stuff.
I used to ride horses a lot, and you see a lot of novice riders telling the horse with their legs to speed up while pulling on their mouth with the bridle to slow them down.
Yeah,
they want to go, but they're a bit nervous, and that sounds the same sort of thing to me.
Yeah.
Sort of trying to pulling in two directions at once.
Obviously, it's a lot about politics and regulations and what's there, but I think a lot goes down to strategy on the MNO side and how they see their different propositions.
What would you say has been your single biggest lesson, apart from get more sleep, from your venture into MVNO?
I would say my biggest lesson is focus on the end user. It's very easy to focus on what are the others doing and trying to have an offering in terms of just competing what's out there and trying to make a standard offering as much as possible. And then you will only be a smaller operator, more or less. So focus on the end user and to create value, because I think that's where the MNOs are bad. They're good at building connectivity and et cetera, but I think 5G is an example for it. We talked about it for a long time, but no one has still not talked about what's the value for the end user. So, and to focus on spend your time and money on what the big operators can't do, like what's not easy to copy, because some stuff is easier when you're big and some stuff is easier when you don't have politics or legacy on your side.
Okay, yeah, I think that's interesting. So we have another question here. How are you building moats and defenses if traditional players launch the digital tech brands themselves? Or is it more a focus not on what they're doing, but what you're doing? I don't know.
I think, I mean, we have the benefit of serving the entire countries as our market. So I think there are room for more players. I would also say, again, goes down to have a niched target segment and to have a niched product, because most digital or tech brands are also quite general. So if you focus on your target group, you can be best there, independent on there are other brands or tech brands on the challenger side. Obviously, we with our tech platform, then we have or want to have the digital brands as our customers instead. So that's a bit of our strategy to have a win-win situation. They can launch them, but they can use our tech for it. and then we get part of the cake, so to say.
Okay, well, you've interested our next speaker, Neil McRae, who's asked, there are certain elements of the mobile sector in Europe that are in disrepair and which needs fixing. And he says, how do you think this could affect and is affecting MVNOs? So if there are areas that aren't functioning too well by the mobile operators, does that impact you?
I would say it's a hard question. I'm trying to figure out, but there are certain elements of the mobile sector that are in disrepair, which needs resolving. I would say, I think more MVNOs should go a bit more political. I think we are quite in our bubble of doing our business, but where the MVNOs are not really representing the telecom space on a political point of view, then I mean on the telecom political side. If you know how to do so, I would love to be part of a community of MVNO, like more, because I think we should, because it's a big part of MNO CEO's job, but I don't think most MVNOs have it as part of their job description to actually try to impact the different movements.
I don't know if this is what Neil was thinking about, but I was really interested, Martina, in you saying you were surprised how much work you had to do on the customer service, self-service that was really lacking. So I think that's maybe an area of complete, I don't know if disrepair or just not addressed. I just think that
I'm not sure I understand the question really, I think.
Well, Neil's just appeared, so we might be prepared to elaborate himself.
Yeah, sorry, and look, a great presentation, Martina. I think my kind of question was around, you know, here in the UK, and I know in other markets, you know, we're not making the MNOs are not making a return on capex, and you know, I've got a bias. I work for an MNO, right? So, please bear that in mind. But on the engineering side, I'm also trying to drive scale. So, you know, there's two aspects to that. But, you know, we've seen some pricing behavior from MVNOs that you look at it and you think, you know, is that really healthy for the market? And I do agree with your point about them getting more involved in the industry as a whole. I don't think they're represented at all, frankly. But I do feel that, you know, I believe there's a reset coming to the mobile operator business because we can't go on as we are. It's just not sustainable. And my question was really, what does that mean for MVNOs? What do you know? How can they help this problem? Because I think, you know, there is obviously a space for MVNOs. There's a space for choice. It's how do we make sure that we're making that return so that we've got a business to invest in the future.
That's a good question. I totally agree with the fact that, I mean, it's a huge amount of capex been invested, and the willingness to pay for more has not been really there. But I think, and I think that goes a bit to innovation and the lack of change towards the end users, because it's more been to like focus has been quite long to just solve issues, to solve the biggest frustration, and to solve, but that's as soon as you've done it and it's huge projects, it's still just like finally, but it's not like you're willing to pay more for it. So we need to, like, I think telecom companies in general, and I think I saw a bit about that at MWC, also need to partner up more in different parts of the value chain, because if you build everything yourself and you need to be great at every part of the value chain yourself, just to maintain will take all of your efforts, and you will never be great or innovative in all parts at the same time. I think we're discussing for some parts, like a company would never get the idea to build their own email configurator to have your emails. Like, it's a standard behavior to go with one of the big email providers. But in telecom, like it's still some part of the technology or some part of the value chain, it's still like you need to do it in-house. But I think at MWC, also some launches to the market, there was a lot of bundled launches from like an MVNO and AWS and a third-party vendor. They did a launch of a product to the market together. And I think that's a start where we can start, because I think it needs innovation for the customers to pay more in the end.